Good morning. This is a pleasure to host today, the pleasure and honor to host today the ambassador of Ukraine, His Excellency Igor Dolgov. This is the very important times for Ukraine, for Georgia, for the Black Sea region, and it is very important for us and for our society to know the answers to the questions which are rising in the society, and we are all concerned. And I must frankly say from the very beginning that this is not only just for the interview, but this is a demonstration from the Rondelli Foundation of our strong and unwavering support to Ukraine, to Ukrainian people, and to your sovereignty and territorial integrity. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much. For me, it's also a privilege to be with you in this nice place. Rondelli Foundation is a reliable partner of the Ukrainian embassy, and we conducted a series of events together. And one of the most important, and I'm sure that this event is also connected with today's topic, is the conference on the occupation of Crimea, roundtables. We had it several times, and we invited, when pandemic threat was not here, high-level guests from Ukraine, and it was a perfect forum to discuss such kind of issues between representatives of governments, civil society, and diplomatic corps. And of course, it's my pleasure to try to answer your questions. Of course, I do not have answers to all questions, but at least with pleasure, I'm going to share with you my opinion, my analysis of what is happening around Ukraine, in Europe, and at the global scale.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. So let's start with the first question. Do you think, and do the leadership in Kiev think that Russia may really dare to start new military confrontation in eastern Ukraine and try to invade parts of Ukraine?
In case of dealing with Russia, no one can predict. We didn't think in 2014, you didn't think in 2008, so they just start. And they need no pretext or any preconditions. It's only their vision and plans, which are unfortunately absolutely correspond with empire way of thinking, and anything is excluded. We have to be prepared, and this is our task, to keep high level of readiness in Ukrainian army, on the front line, to keep the spirit and resilience in Ukrainian society, and of course to increase our readiness to reject any kind.
What is the difference between 2014 and 2021? Or in Ukraine, in your defense capabilities, you mentioned the resilience of society. How different is Ukraine of 2014 and 2021?
Well, the difference is significant, and of course, when we discuss such issues, for me, it's not from the point of view of geopolitics or military or whatever. The main point for me is that during these 7 years, a new generation of kids on the occupied territories grown up and started to go to school. 7 years. So, and all this time, Russian propaganda and brainwashing was there. So, my first intention is to think about people on the occupied territories, in Crimea, and how do they feel them? How do they live under the occupation with the Muppet regime under Russian propaganda? If we talk about Ukrainian society, of course, Ukrainian army is bigger. We increased the size of army and number of military personnel is now 250, which is more than doubled. And
250,000.
yes,
Yeah.
of course. And it's new quality of arms, new quality of training, new quality of interaction, and new quality of conduct different types of operations. We have now officers trained according to NATO standards, and this process of training never stopped, and we are continuing together with our friends from the United States, Canada, Great Britain, Poland, Lithuania. Their military experts continue to work with Ukrainian units in Ukrainian training fields. So preparedness is much higher. The same I can tell you about Ukrainian society as a whole, because you remember well that the first reaction in 2014 was a mass emotional movement to support army, which was very weak, which was not equipped, which was army didn't have anything. So procurement, supply of simple things like night vision or food supplies, it was also part of the huge job of Ukrainian volunteers, of all Ukrainian society. So in this regard, of course, we have much more trained army. We have society.
What about international community? Are you satisfied with the level of the reactions coming from the international community? Almost every hour we are hearing and reading new statements made by G7 foreign ministers, by NATO ministers, by individual states. There is a communication between, almost permanent communication at all highest levels between the United States and Ukraine. Your minister had met with NATO Secretary General. All of them are urging Russia to stop building up the military contingent on the border with Ukraine and de-escalate the situation and stop provocation. Are you satisfied with this level? Why I'm asking, that President Zelensky and other your officials were urging for more concrete support, practical support. What is your request and what is your need?
Thank you. This question is very important. And first of all, we are very thankful to all leaders and capitals who already expressed their support and continue to be with Ukraine. But the answer, I always have the same answer for the question, what do you think about sanctions? Is it enough? And this is the same nature of the question. No, I'm not satisfied, because despite sanctions and despite all calls to Russia to stop escalation, we do not see a practical result. What is practical result in my view? This, now, immediately, it's de-escalation, which is not happening. In the longer run, what is the result for Ukraine? It's the occupation of Donbass and occupied regions, and coming back of Crimea. This is the result. Is it here? No. So how could I be satisfied? No.
Yes, and the president was speaking, your president was speaking about the possibility of locating the air defense systems, or Patriot systems, and asking for locating these systems in Ukraine. Do you officially consider and negotiate with the United States already? Did you start already to officially negotiate this issue?
I'm not ready to answer these questions because it's too sensitive to be discussed publicly. So I have no particular information on this very important issue. But of course, our long and fruitful cooperation with our strategic partner, the United States of America, sooner or later would raise the issue of increasing the volume of our mutual support and cooperation. We expect that in case if the escalation will be from the Russian side growing up, we could expect more assistance from the US in weapons and in training and financial support, all that could build stronger readiness of Ukraine to oppose the aggression. Because, and again, it's a very important point which I used to use in my previous work in NATO headquarters, that Ukraine is on the front line, and all NATO strategy vis-à-vis Russia now is deterrence. And Ukraine is the main deterrence force, because we distract Russian resources, Russian army to our borders. And by doing so, we pay our part of contribution to security of NATO and this common strategy of deterrence of the Russian Federation.
President Zelensky also visiting Brussels has addressed the NATO leadership and member states to speed up the process, which I fully support, of granting the membership action plan to Ukraine and certainly to Georgia. And what is absolutely important that President Zelensky mentioned that the only way the solution to the de-escalation of the situation would be speedy integration of Ukraine in North Atlantic Alliance. Is your message heard and understood, and is there building a consensus among the member states, having analyzed the situation in Ukraine?
Well, it's an important question, and of course, if we look back at our history, and your history, Ukrainian history, if in 2008 Ukraine and Georgia would be granted medal, I doubt that Russia dared to start the aggression in 2008 against Georgia and in 2014 against Ukraine. So, of course, I fully support President Zelensky's approach to membership of Ukraine in NATO. This is the only real guarantee of Ukrainian independence and sovereignty vis-à-vis such a troublemaking neighbor. So it's a must for Ukraine. And this is the choice of Ukrainian people. That is why the Maidan in 2014 started in 2013, actually, late fall. It was the expression of the will of Ukrainians. We want to be, and we will be, and we are in Europe, in NATO, in the EU.
That's a very important message, but my question is, I have been asked myself many times, meeting with the students, with civil society representatives, that where is the problem? I mean, for consensus.
You mentioned consensus is a problem. To build a consensus, it's a long exercise and very difficult one. So, but I believe that more manifestations of the aggressive policy of the Russian Federation we see, we observe, all of us, not only Ukraine or Georgia, but NATO, Europe, globally, more aggression, well, more arguments from NATO to build this consensus. Because somehow we have to stop this policy, which had the only idea to dominate and to rebuild a Soviet-style empire, which is not acceptable anymore. And I believe that with all internal problems of development within the European Union, with all specifics of strengthening transatlantic ties, consensus building regarding the membership of Ukraine, it's a purely political issue nowadays. And in terms of global security, this is the only solution which could change the overall security situation and to stop the aggressive policy from Moscow.
Do you think that if the situation further deteriorates and the threat increases, can the NATO leadership come to closer to the agreement that this is the only way to stop Russian aggression and to invite Ukraine and Georgia?
Well, I hope, and it's not only just wait-and-see position, because I know that Ukrainian diplomats as well as Georgian diplomats and leaders continue to work in that direction to communicate with leaders of NATO member states. And of course, the situation and common security issues is a new factor which should be considered while deciding about membership.
Yes, there was a huge interest for the visit of President Zelensky to Ankara, his official to Istanbul. I'm sorry, to Turkey, and his meeting with President Erdogan. In a very short period of time, it was their second meeting. So it certainly makes nervous our northern neighbors, Russian Federation. There was a call prior to the visit of President Zelensky by President Putin to Mr. Erdogan, and then explaining this situation with the pandemics. They have shut down the flights in direction of Turkey from Russia until June 1st. So, could you enlighten us a bit more what we have seen in media about the results of Ukrainian-Turkish relationship? It is very important because Turkey is our neighbor, it's a NATO member, an important player in the Black Sea region. So what kind of relationship we are witnessing today between Ukraine and Turkey? And what are the perspectives?
Well, you named several very important factors describing your relations with Turkey. All these factors are also valid for Ukraine. And even more, Turkey for us is a strategic partner. It's a very close neighbor and partner in many spheres. We have one of the biggest turnover in trade with Turkey. And the result of this meeting of leaders of Ukraine and Turkey is visible from the declaration which was signed. Presidents established a high-level bilateral council. So it was a regular meeting. And you're right, this is for the second time already they meet. But this is a real strategic partnership. When we need to discuss more or to make another decision, we meet. And it's not against somebody, so no concerns from other capitals. It's continuation of high-level dialogue. And of course, if leaders meet, they also have an opportunity to decide on practical issues which are actual and important right now. In the case of current situation, of course, it's strengthening of the military-industrial cooperation. We started already to work with Turkey on UAV, unmanned air vehicles, and we will continue. And in defense industry, we have also several very important projects which are to be implemented. And of course, for us, as usual, the position of Turkey regarding Crimea and Crimean Tatars, it's a very important factor. And in this regard, the decision of Turkey to construct or to build 200 apartments for Crimean Tatars in Kherson, 200 in Mykolaiv, and 100 in Kiev. It's a very important step, and of course, all Crimean Tatar community in Ukraine and in Crimea would appreciate such a move from the part of our strategic partner. And reaction from Moscow, and you mentioned that they stopped an air communication with Turkey. It's one more manifestation of the policy and vision of Russian leadership. Because who lost? It's Russian people who wanted to spend their holidays on the seashore in Turkey. So they lost this opportunity. But Russian leadership, they do not care about own people. There are some higher principles which are manifest.
Yeah, and higher targets and higher values is, of course, in their meaning and in their own understanding. Now, let's talk about European Union. EU is also strongly supporting Ukraine, and it's more political support and financial, technical support. And what are the nearest priorities? They are supporting, as well as the United States, in doing reforms in your country. By the way, how the process of doing reforms is going in Ukraine, and what are the priorities in EU-Ukraine's relationship today?
Well, of course, again, these relations with the European Union and our participation in the Eastern Partnership Program together with Georgia is the policy which unites our plans and ambitions with yours, with Georgians. But, and we appreciate all kinds of support that we continue to receive from Brussels, from the EU. But for us, for Ukraine, the European Union is not only the source of support. For us, especially now, when we started to review FTA agreement, primarily EU is a partner in trade, in economy, in all possible fields of cooperation. Partner.
Is the trade increasing?
Yes, permanently. And that is why there is a strong demand between business communities of the EU and Ukraine to review the DFTA. Because after 5 years of operation with this agreement, as well as you, we have our own experience, and we identified already fields which requires more attention, and there were set quotas which should be reconsidered and increased. Because, for example, Ukrainian export, the best example maybe is honey. Ukrainian quota is so modest that Ukrainian exporters fulfill this quota in 2 weeks. So beginning of the year and it's finished, it's gone. And of course we can produce much more and we can sell to Europe, to that market, much more products. And Ukrainian productions, I mean in field of the agriculture first of all, it's the products of the good quality with strong reputation. And if we talk about free trade, we expect that this freedom will be broader and broader for Ukrainian products. And that is why the second track of our negotiations and our practical steps with the EU. This is so-called industrial visa-free. It's a question of certification of industrial products from Ukraine, which also should facilitate the access of Ukrainian production to the EU market. New track, which is also, and Ukraine is important partner of the European Union in the Green Deal. It's a future, and Ukraine with its resources and industry is a substantial part of this Green Deal. And many other spheres which we expect to advance in our practical cooperation with the European Union. But of course, all these steps, smaller or bigger, we see as a part of the strategy of the membership in the European Union. Eastern Partnership, it's a good instrument, but it's not enough. Our ambitions much higher, and Brussels and EU member states are aware that we are important and Ukrainian ambitions are to be there. It is also important for the European Union, because in this global competition, EU must be a strong player if they want to be a player. After Brexit, well, for me it's evident that EU requires fresh blood, and in this regard, involvement of new member as Ukraine, as Georgia, is substantial.
You several times mentioned our common goals, and yes, I fully agree with you that NATO-EU integration is this strategic priorities where our efforts should be united, and we are testing to unite our strength to finally join the NATO and the European Union. But now, last but not least, about Georgia-Ukraine's bilateral relations. What are the chances to elevate the Ukrainian-Georgian relationship to the qualitatively higher level? What are the obstacles? What are the challenges? And what are the perspectives of further deepening Georgia-Ukrainian relationship?
Thank you. It's important, and it's main part of my activities here to develop bilateral relations between Ukraine and Georgia. So you mentioned how to reach or what should we do to increase the level of our cooperation. I would say that there is no higher level of relations than we have between our countries. Strategic partnership is a top possibility, top option. We do not have too many strategic partners, and we are very glad that Georgia is one of them. So what to do and how to expand, maybe how to use to full extent resources of strategic partnership. So the first thing is that, of course, in many respects, the year 2020 was a bit problematic not only for Ukrainian-Georgia relations, but also to all over relations, international relations, because of pandemic crisis. And that is why President Zurabishvili had to postpone her planned visit to Ukraine in March 2020. So we had.
Is it under planning now?
Well, she had an invitation, and we continue to work on that. So, and of course, under given conditions when pandemic and quarantine measures limited our possibility to travel and to see each other, many things happened in political field regarding our bilateral cooperation and position on the international forum. So international organizations gave us a possibility to be as close as we can be. supporting each other in our intention to regain our territorial integrity and national sovereignty over our occupied territories. So more than any other previous year, we demonstrated our mutual support in terms of not only resolutions at the United Nations or Security Council or in any other international organizations, but all possibilities have been used. We continue to work together and to elaborate common proposals to the European Union. And maybe you took note that foreign ministers of Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova addressed the EU with a joint letter explaining our vision of the future cooperation in the framework of the Eastern Partnership. So we will continue such coordination of our policy and our steps vis-à-vis EU. In our cooperation with NATO, we also have a lot of common, not only sharing ideas, but practical steps. Last year, Ukraine became NATO's partner with expanded possibilities. As this status, Georgia received 5 years ago. So you have better
2014.
Yes. So that is why when Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Taran, visited Georgia last summer, it was one of the substantial topics of discussions. Black Sea and Black Sea security is also our common challenge and our common interest. And in this regard, we also speak with NATO the same language and elaborate our proposals which match our national interest and also comprise our possibilities regarding what can we bring to NATO to cooperate in the Black Sea. So many things, and of course, unfortunately, bilateral trade suffered during this year. We lost like 12.7% in our turnover. So now we have to find, and we started to work on that, how to not only to reach the level we used to have, but to increase. And we see opportunities, because there is also one of the main possibilities to replace Georgian import from the Russian Federation. What we can offer to Georgia to be your partner in trade instead of Russia.
Especially in tourism.
Tourism and
we welcome most and hopefully the Ukrainian friends to spend their holidays in Georgia.
No doubt about that. And if you look at the timetable of Tbilisi airport, you could easily see that what do we have now? Every day, two Ukrainian companies, MAU and SkyUp, have daily flights. So 14 flights per week from Ukraine. I do not know who has more. No one. And we started already to Ukrainian companies to operate from Kiev to Batumi. And I was told, and when my wife, she visited our daughter like a month ago in Kiev, it was not easy to find the place. Yeah, so Ukrainians are here, and we would appreciate more Georgian visitors, guests, friends in Ukraine.
With pleasure. Slava Ukraini.
Heroям слава.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your very interesting interview, and we hope that the situation will de-escalate and hope. But anyway, Georgia is supporting Ukraine and will be supporting. You feel the support among Georgian people, and I see all the time the supporters in front of your embassy, and here in Rondelli Foundation you have the full support.
Of course, we are very thankful for your support, for the support of President Zurabishvili, which she expressed after her annual address to the parliament, and support from the Minister for Foreign Affairs, and of course from people. As you mentioned, a lot of them we can see near our embassy.
Thank you. Thank you very
It's a
much.
very good